Hello, Boca High, and to all the Bobcat faithful. This is Mr. Wasserman, one of your assistant principals, coming to you live. This is not a pre-recorded presentation today. Today we welcome a very special guest, a Holocaust survivor, Mr. Eric Lippitz, and we are so fortunate to have him come to our school virtually to meet with all of you and say his truly amazing story. Whenever we have a guest in our home or our school, we know that all of our students will live up to the wonderful reputation that we have earned by showing the proper respect and decorum. More so, when you do have a Holocaust survivor, you do want to make sure you get into the proper mindset, the certain tone and seriousness of the nature of the presentation. As always, we have our counselors and assistant principals and deans and all adults on campus standing by if anything in today's presentation is upsetting, and please just let somebody know and you will be able to talk to someone. I am now going to present Miss Kimberly Coombs, who is the program planner of Holocaust Study for all of Palm Beach County, who has thankfully arranged this awesome opportunity. Thank you, Bobcat. And please, it's next up to Miss Coombs.
Thank you, Mr. Wasserman, and I also want to thank Dr. King for this amazing opportunity. We are so honored to be here with you today as your students witness living history. Before we start, I just want to set you up for the experience of listening to a Holocaust survivor, and I want to read a quote from Holocaust survivor and Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel about the experience of hearing survivor testimony. Wiesel says, the idea of telling these stories is to sensitize people, that you should become more sensitive to yourselves, to your friends, and even to strangers. Become sensitive not only to the story of what we try to tell, but about what happens even today. Because what happens even today is always related to what happened then. Elie Wiesel also says, whoever listens to a witness becomes a witness. Today, you become a witness. It's our job to pass it on. If you have any questions or comments today, your teachers were sent a Google form, and you can ask your questions through that Google form. There's also, I think that's called a banner running across the bottom of the screen that has the link for the Google form on there. Mr. Lippitz will try to answer as many questions as he can. He will also receive these questions via email later, and he will do his best to answer them if he doesn't get to them during today's presentation. I now want to introduce you to one of the kindest, most caring men I have ever met. His mission is to make sure that you, the future, the youth of America, know what happened during the Holocaust. So please give your undivided attention to Mr. Eric Lippitz.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Boca High. Thank you so much for this invitation. It means a lot to me because our generation is the last generation of survivors. We're what's called the last of the Mohegans, and I've got to pass my message on to you. Because after us, all the Holocaust deniers will say, well, show me one person.
There's something wrong with the speed of his voice?
Around someone, and you heard someone who was a Holocaust survivor. I think I'm on, am I?
Yes, you are. It looks like you're lagging just a little bit, but
okay.
I think you'll be okay. I may need to put just a blank slide up here with you, so it's a little smaller for you guys. But you should be able to go ahead.
I don't mind any. Okay, I can go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me start where I was born in Antwerp, Belgium, 1936. My father originally was from Kovno, Lithuania, My mother was from Poland. They met in Belgium. My father was studying at Liège at the time, a very, very well-known university. And that's when he met my mother. They settled in Belgium. My father spoke quite a few languages. I never got to see my grandparents. I'll get to tell you about that as we go on. But we had a pretty good life over there, more than pretty good. It was a very comfortable life. I have two older brothers. What I will show you right now is just a picture of my family that was taken when we came to America after the war. I think you can see it. That's me next to my brother over here. And but anyhow, we were living in Antwerp. We had a very nice life there. We had a governess and my parents, family, etc. My oldest brother is 4 years older than me, and then I have my middle brother, which is about 2 years older than me, and then I was the youngest. Excuse me. Life was very good until about 1940. Prior to that, my father kept saying that there's danger in the world. There's a fellow in Germany called Adolf Hitler, and the one who looks like Charlie Chaplin. But he's a very, very dangerous man, and he's a big anti-Semite. He's against Catholics also and gay people, and he is trying to rearm Germany. And things are not looking too good. Fortunately, he had started making plans. He went out and bought as much diamonds as he could, because he said, if we ever have to leave, if Belgium is attacked, we're going to have to move pretty quickly. And the only thing that's going to be acceptable to go from border to border is diamonds. So he bought the diamonds as much as he could. It wasn't that much, but everything helped. The mistake he made was he put them in a safe deposit box, and I will tell you what happened. He, in 1940, one night, my parents were out for the evening. We just had my two brothers and the governess. All of a sudden, I was so awakened.
Mr. Lippis, yes. Can I have you exit out and try to come back in? It seems like your audio is a little bit garbled, and we just want to make sure that you're clear for the students. So if you can exit out down at the bottom and then come back in with the link that Ms. Coombs shared with you, and students will get right back to the program again.
Should I press leave studio?
Yeah, and then go back to the link that you joined before. Correct.
Okay.
And we'll see you back here in just a moment. Sorry about that. We want to make sure we have the best possible experience for everyone. We're not sure what was going on with his audio. So give us a second and he'll be right back. There you go. All right.
Is that a bit better?
Yeah, you sound better now.
Okay.
So
would it be better if I shut my speakers off?
No, I don't think it was your speakers. I don't know if you have anything else running on your computer, maybe. But Ms. Coombs asked if possibly you could just start over again, and we'll go from there.
Right now, I just have you and I.
Yep, that's it. So go ahead and you can get started again. If you can start
from the beginning, or should I just?
Yeah, if you can start from the beginning, that would be great.
Okay. All right, guys. Sorry for the disruption, modern technology. In any case, I'll try to go a little quicker to the point where I was at. I was born in Belgium, Antwerp, Belgium, in October 1936. I have two older brothers. My father originally was from Kovno, Lithuania, my mother from Poland. My father was studying in Liège in Antwerp, and that's where he met my mother, married, and 3 children. I'm the youngest. My oldest brother is 4 years older than me, and my middle brother was 2 years older than me. We had a good life there. My father was involved in a few businesses, and everything was going well except the international news. My father was very, very leery about was going on in the world, especially with the fellow in Germany called Adolf Hitler, who looked like Charlie Chaplin, except Charlie Chaplin was a comedian, and this was a man who came right from hell, a terrible, terrible human being, if that's what you want to call him, who was a big anti-Semite and was against Catholics, gays, and just about everybody else that didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, which he didn't have. Anyway, I'm going up now around 1940. In 1940, I should say, I was 4 years old. One evening, I was asleep in our bedroom. My two brothers were there also. My parents were out for the evening. And I was woken up by terrible noises outside. And I got very scared. I looked out the window and I saw fire. I just didn't know what to do. I jumped out of my bed. I jumped into my oldest brother's bed, and he was holding me, and I was holding him and my other brother also. We didn't know what to do or what was going on. The governors came in, tried to calm everybody down, but the explosions were all over. Are we having a problem again? Well, I'll keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking, Eric. It's a little bit difficult, but I think it's better.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. If there's a problem, you just come on and stop me. That'll be good. I'm sorry, guys. Modern technology is not always the best thing, but I can't be there to hug you, so we'll have to do it this way. But I love you anyway. My parents came in early in the morning, all disheveled and afraid, and they said, just put a few things in a bag. We have to leave here right away. We've got a big problem. The big problem was that the Nazis were invading Belgium. It was a blitzkrieg. The Air Force was bombing everything around, and the army was marching in. And we had to get out and get out quick. We thought we would head towards France and see what happens, but it wasn't long before we were on the road, and there was strafing all over. We were jumping from the car into ditches. I have a distinct memory of my father lying on top of me and trying to protect us. And when the air raid was over, looking up and seeing cars, cars turned over on the road, people screaming in pain, blood everywhere, and we didn't know what to do. We tried to make it to a farmhouse. The cars were still running, so we went a bit further, and we tried to hide. My cousin made it to Dunkirk, where we managed to get on a boat by stealing a Polish uniform. There were a lot of Polish soldiers over there also trying to escape. And he did manage to get on a boat wearing a Polish uniform. They got suspicious of him, and he jumped off just as they got to the shores of England. Anyhow, we made it to the Spanish border after a lot of pain and anguish. It may sound funny now, but it wasn't at the time. During our escape, my brothers and I all came down with the German measles. It wasn't bad enough that the Nazis were after us. We had to come down with the German measles. So we managed to get to the Spanish border, but they wouldn't let us through. They said, we're not letting anybody through, and my father was of military age, and they were afraid that he was going to start to fight also. At that time, my father realized, my goodness, I don't have the diamonds. And this was a real problem, because they were not going to let us through unless we could butter them up pretty good with the bakshish, as they call it. And that is what he did. And this took a lot of guts. He took my oldest brother, went back to Antwerp to our house. It was still standing. He put on a suit, got my brother all dressed up. The Nazis were already in Antwerp. And he went right to the bank. He spoke perfect German, and he spoke to a few officers on the way there. And he said, "Oh boy, we're glad you're here. We'll be some order in Belgium now." With that, he went to the safety deposit box, took out the diamonds, put them in his pocket and walked out again with my brother. There were some Gestapo people there who got very suspicious, and instead of trying to run away from them or walk away from them, he went right up to them and he said, "Good morning," in perfect German, and he said, "What's going on in Berlin? Is there going to be a Wagner concert this year? Is to be playing Beethoven?" And made conversation with him. Of course, he told me later that he was so scared he didn't know what to do, but unfortunately, my brother didn't say anything either. So they chatted for a bit, and he went on his way and made his way back to us. It took an awful lot of courage, a lot of guts to walk right into the lion's den, talk to the lion, and still get out. Should I move closer? Is that what I see? Okay. Are we still having trouble, Kim?
A little bit, yeah. It's a little garbled. I think maybe I just want to say that in case it was garbled in the beginning, that you're speaking about your dad now and the things that your dad went through and your brother. But I think try to keep going, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. If there's a problem, just let me know. So
Sounds good
again,
right
now
now.
we're at the border with Spain. We were trying to get to Portugal because my father's brother, who was living in the States at the time, made arrangements for a boat for us on a temporary visa to get to the United States. But prior to this, I've got to tell you what happened. And it's a real tough one, guys, so hang on. Very good friends of my parents, big diamond dealers in Antwerp. The Germans put out leaflets that nobody should leave, that everything will be okay, that we're here to help the Belgians, etc. This man was married. He had, I believe, twins, but I'm not sure. A boy and a girl. When the Nazis came in, the Gestapo seemed to know where all the Jews were. They went up to his apartment building. They went up the stairs, knocked on his door. He opened it up, and a Nazi officer just took out his revolver and shot him right in the head, right there and then. Of course, his wife was screaming, crying. There was blood all over the place, and the two little children were crying. And the Nazi officer said, "Get out, get downstairs with your children, get out of here immediately. You're going where we're going to tell you to go." He pushed her down the stairs, still holding the kids, and there was a truck there full of people crying and screaming. They were rounding up Jews everywhere. And this Nazi officer, in his very polished boots and uniform, looking so smart, the devil himself, he said to her, "Get in the truck, get in the truck." And he pushed her on there. Some people in the truck helped her up, and she's holding her two children. And he says, Madame, you can only take one child." And she looked at him and she said, "You just killed my husband. You took away my home. This is all I have left. They are coming with me wherever you're taking us." And he said, "Madame, it's very simple. Either throw one of the children down, or I'll shoot all of you right here." Guys, what do? Your children, your loved one was just murdered, brutally murdered, and now they tell you to throw one of your children down. What do you think? What do you say about these human beings? How can anybody do something like this? She didn't know what to do. She had a breakdown right there. And she threw both children out. She was taken to Boca Raton. She somehow or other survived the war. We heard the story after the war. We were in America, and we were told that she survived, and she told us the story about what happened. But anyway, we made it to across the border, but they wouldn't let my father through. So what he did was he was told to go to Morocco, and from Morocco to send a cable, and we should send him a cable rather, saying the children are very sick. Please come back immediately. Please come back. My mother sent him the cable. Nothing. And then the consul general said, send another cable, keep saying that's an absolute emergency, and on a compassionate basis, please try to come over. So I think by the third cable, the consul general in Morocco said, okay, go ahead, go through into Spain. So they let him through, and we met up again. Spain was already full of Gestapo agents, Nazis everywhere. It was a very hard time. My mother didn't think that we would even survive that. But we managed to get on a train that was going to Portugal. Now, you've got to understand, guys, this is wartime, a terrible time. And there were blackouts everywhere. The Nazis were invading, and just about every country around, they were advancing very fast. We were just trying to escape. On the train to Portugal, it was already night. The train was packed full of people. Now, we hadn't changed our clothes or eaten much of anything for so long, and we were just standing there. It was nighttime. There was a complete blackout. And next to me was sitting a gentleman, and he just sat there. And a Belgian soldier came up to him and said, look, this is not the way a gentleman acts. We know there's a war on, but you see this lady and her husband standing here. The lady's holding 3 little children. At least take 2 of them on your lap. And he didn't answer. Another soldier came by and said, Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, take the children on your lap, or let the lady sit down with the children. And he said, I've got a bad leg. I can't take anybody. So the soldier said, Monsieur, you have choice to make. He said, I'll throw you off the train or shoot you right here, or let the lady sit down with the children, or let the children sit on your lap, at least the 2 little ones. So he said, okay. With that, the soldier, one of the officers, picked me up and put me on his lap. And then he picks up my brother, Leon, and puts him on his other leg. With that, Leon was just a little boy. I mean, I was 5. He was 6, a little more than 6. His leg kicked, and he kicked the man's leg, which set off a transmitter. This man was a German spy. He was trying to transmit the location of the train to the German Air Force so that they could bomb the train as it was moving. Of course, the soldiers quickly grabbed the transmitter, they shut it off, and they took him out and shot him. This was the beginning of my childhood. There was no childhood. By the way, my grandparents, my grandmother was killed in her home by the Nazis. My father wanted my grandparents to come to Belgium, and that we'd all escape together, but they were getting old, and they said, we're not leaving here, we're staying here in Kovno, Lithuania, and whatever will happen, will happen. My grandfather was taken to Auschwitz, where he was where he died, the gas chambers. I never even saw my grandfather. My oldest brother made 2 trips with my father prior to the war, and he saw him. I never saw him. I never had the pleasure of sitting on a grandparent's lap, hearing a story, or tasting my grandmother's cooking. So it goes. So now we get to Portugal, and we're put on a boat that's the Ivoron, I believe, or the Simony, I don't remember which one it was, going to New York. The war was already pretty much in full force, and the captain of the boat said, complete blackout the whole trip, and we're going to hit very, very rough seas. If anybody is caught lighting a cigarette or lighting anything outside, especially at night, they'll be shot immediately. There are German U-boats and submarines all over the place. We made it through very, very rough seas, but we got into New York. You can imagine the wonderful feeling. No Nazis here. No one's looking to kill us. We're free. We're in America, the land of the free, and we can start a new life here. Never mind that we left everything in Belgium and that we didn't have 1 penny to our name. It didn't matter. We would make it. We would make it because no one was going to stop us. So we thought. We get off the boat. Who's there? State Department people, the FBI, and of course immigration people. And they take us, they took everybody into different rooms, and they asked us, what's your story? What's going on? So my parents told, excuse me 1 second. My parents told them what happened and everything. And they said, okay, let's see your passports. They left the room with the passports and they came back and they said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you can't stay in America. You cannot stay in America. There's a quota for Jews. And you'll have to leave here either on the next ship or maybe we can arrange for you to stay for a little bit. My father's brother immediately made arrangements. And he said, listen, you've got to let them stay. They're going to be working for me. My brother, which is who my father, is going to go to Manila with the family. But the Philippines at that time was an American protectorate from the Spanish-American War. And my uncle had mills both in the Philippines and in China. So that was our next trip. We weren't allowed to stay in America, but we figured out it won't be long. We'll be able to go back. So here we are. We crossed the Panama Canal a few weeks later, and we're on our way to the Philippines with a very sad heart. A good part of my family made it to Cuba. Some made it to South Africa, and some just were allowed to stay in America. I don't know how it was done, but we were sent out. They did not want us. We get to Manila. Now, you've got to understand the difference. The Philippines, Manila's a beautiful city. It was called the Pearl of the Orient, but it was very, very hot. Air conditioning did not exist. You had to sleep with a mosquito net because of the malaria and all the other diseases, which made it even hotter. And the temperature on a cool day, it could be well over 100. That's quite a difference from living in Belgium, where it was most of the time just like England, where it was cool and damp. But you know what? We thought we were free. We weren't concerned. We figured we'd be going to the States soon and everything would be okay. So we tried to settle in. We had a small apartment next to Manila Bay, and we tried to adjust as best as we could. But again, the papers were full of stories about America and Japan being at odds on a lot of political things. And it seemed to be getting worse. And my father, again, said, I'm very concerned. He said, I don't know what we're going to do. There's a war between America and Japan. And people were laughing. They said, there'll never be a war between America and Japan. America's so big. America's so strong. It just can't happen. P.S. My father said, you know what? We won't be able to escape if there is a war. Because the Philippines is nothing but a group of islands. The people in charge of the American consulate in the Philippines was a man by the name of McNutt from Indiana. He used to be a senator there. General MacArthur, who led the Pacific Forces during the war, he escaped. And General Eisenhower, who was later became the president. The president of the Philippines was a very, very religious Catholic man, and everybody seemed, his name was Quezon, Manuel Quezon, and he got along very well with everybody. And the people in Manila in general got along very well. There was a good feeling between all groups, all religions, and everything. The Jews in the Philippines mainly came from what they call the Saudis countries, from Syria, from Morocco, etc. And they had built a beautiful synagogue there. I'll hold up a picture so hopefully you can at least get a glimpse of it. I don't know how well it'll come over, but this is it. It didn't last long. though, there was very good. One day, Kazan was sitting with MacArthur and McNutt and Eisenhower, and he said, "Is it true, all the stories we hear about what's going on in Europe with this fellow Hitler?" There was not the communications. There was no CNN or MSNBC at this time that news could flash across. He said, "We hear that the Jews are being murdered. We hear that Catholics and gays are being murdered. What's going on?" And Eisenhower and MacArthur said, "Yes, it's true." So Kazan said, "Listen, this is an American possession. The Jews here have done very well. We would like to take as many as you can bring over here. Let them come here. Bring me 10,000. Bring me 1,000. Bring me 100,000. Bring me 1,000,000, as many as you can. Bring me Jews. Bring me Catholics. Whoever is being persecuted." McNutt got so excited about the idea of getting these refugees on boats and bringing them to the Philippines so they wouldn't be killed. And he flew to America. Of course, at that time, it took a couple of days. He arrived in Washington. He went to the State Department. He went to see Roosevelt, and he told him the story. And he told him, "Look, everybody's for it. We can take as many Jews as possible into the Philippines, the Jewish community. They will take care of them." And Kazan is willing to use the island of Mindanao or Batanco or anywhere that they can start and they can make their own businesses, and it'll help the country. It'll help everybody. So Roosevelt said, "Well, we'll see." State Department was very cool to the idea, and he waited another week, and he was called back to the State Department, and they said, "I'm sorry, but we cannot do this. We cannot let any more Jews into American territories." He said, "We have a quota, and we have to live by it." And McNutt said, "What are you talking about? These people are getting killed. They're not asking now for money or anything else. They're just asking for a place to live." The answer was no. McNutt was so upset, so angry, that he resigned right there and then. So now we're getting into December 1941. Things are getting hotter and hotter. The Japanese invaded China. Some of you may know about the rape of Nanking, where they took a few 100,000 people and used them for target practice, men, women, and children. It's a book that you should really be aware of to show you what human beings can do to other human beings. There's a lot written about the Holocaust also, but the Pacific was pretty bad. Now comes December 7th over here in America. It's December 8th in Manila in the Philippines. The Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. Now, there's a few questions that I don't think we'll ever know the answer of. How does a whole fleet of Japanese aircraft carriers, Japanese warships, Japanese submarines, Air Force, everything, cross the Pacific? You should look on a map, guys, from Japan, cross the Pacific, past the United States, basically, into Hawaii, and bomb Pearl Harbor, and no one saw anything. Come on. There's got to be an answer. I don't know it. I don't know if we'll ever know it. But then think of 9/11. How can a group of people come to America here in Florida and ask to take flying lessons, and they don't want to learn how to land, just how to take off, and nobody gets suspicious? Nobody says something is wrong here. We better notify the FBI. And the answer to that was 9/11. So some things, guys, I hope some of you, when you get older, will be able to find out what's going on, what happened, because it's a piece of history which is left pretty blank, and it shouldn't be. Absolutely should not be. Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and it wasn't long before they were on their way to Manila. It was terrible bombings. Here we are again, escaping the Germans. Now we're under the Japanese. during the bombings, we were told to go downstairs. We were in an apartment building then, and we were lying on the ground, and we were putting pencils in our mouth like this sideways, because the concussion of the bombs was so hard that if you didn't have something between your teeth, your mouth would open and close so quickly and hard that you could break all your teeth. Japanese came in, they captured Manila. MacArthur declared Manila an open city, which means that American troops were going to leave, and they were going to retreat, and Japanese would stop bombing, which they did for a while. But they rounded everybody up. We were brought to a place called Santa Tomas. Santa Tomas, St. Thomas in English, is a university, was and is a university, but they turned it into a prison camp. And here we are again with the clothing that we had on, very little food. You've got to understand the Japanese culture against the European or German culture, whatever you want to call it, Western culture. The Japanese showed very little mercy. They did not like Caucasians. They didn't care what your religion was, though. And they had something, I don't know what, against Caucasian women. The Germans, on the other hand, the Nazis, the German government that brought you Beethoven, Freud, Schiller, so many brilliant artists, so many brilliant people, how they got to elect a man like Hitler. And so I have no answer for either. But anyway, they put us all in tents. It was hot as a dickens, and we're lying on the ground. I don't remember how long this was, but it was quite a few days. And my father heard a Japanese officer outside the tent speaking to somebody in English. You'll have to excuse me with the drinking. My throat gets dry very quickly. So my father went out, and he was very smart. He said to the Japanese officer, first you have to know you've got to bow very low to a Japanese officer, to any Japanese, otherwise you lose your head. Literally, they had these big samurai swords, and they were not afraid to use them. He bowed very low, and he said, "Excuse me." He said, "I want to tell you, we are not Americans. We are Belgian citizens. I don't know why you rounded us up. We're just here on a trip," hoping that would do it, that they would let us go. So the officer said, "Give me all your passports," which he did. Came back, I think it was a day later or so, and he said, call my father out, and he says, "Look," he said, "as far as you're concerned and your family, you are enemy aliens, but we are not at war with Belgium." He said, "I'll give you a choice. You can either stay here, or you can go back to your apartment, but you will have to work for the Japanese government. We know that you were in the bristle business. In case you guys don't know, bristles are the hair of horses that were used prior to nylon. Nylon didn't come around, I think, till almost the end of the war. And you are going to have to clean. You're going to have to hire Filipinos and clean all the Japanese weapons." My father didn't know what to do. He didn't want to be a fifth columnist. He didn't want to work for the Japanese for sure. But if he had said no, he would have lost his head right there and then, and they would have taken us out and killed us also. He was very scared. He was very nervous, but he had no choice. He said, "Okay." He said, "I'll do it." So they let us go, and we started heading towards our apartment, which was not that far away, I believe. And on the way, my father noticed that we were being followed by some Filipinos. My father was a very, very strong man. He didn't scare easily, but he was a bit concerned because we were in a foreign country. We didn't know what was what. When we got to our apartment, as we started to go up the stairs, one of the Filipinos called my father over. And my father said to us, "Go upstairs. Stay there. Don't come out no matter what." He said, "I'm going to see what's what." So my father crossed the street where they were. Figured, well, here it is. I don't know what's going to be, but let's see. And the Filipino smiled at him, and he said, "Look, don't be scared of us. We were in the camps also. We are Filipino guerrillas, and we are not going to let the Japanese conquer this country, no matter what we have to do, we are going to fight them all the way through. And then one day we know the Americans will come and liberate us. I said to my father, can you help us? What can you do to help us, if anything? So my father said, you know what? He said, I've got to make the cleaning equipment for the Japanese, the bristles to clean the rifles and their pistols and everything. I can do something. I need to hire 50 Filipinos. You send me the men. Send me your own guerrilla people that we can trust. I will show them how to make the equipment to clean the rifles, to put the bristles and the rags in to clean the rifles and the oil. And I will show them how to make it just so it's tight, but not tight enough to really clean them properly. Eventually, hair will stick in the barrels, and then the rifles will misfire, or it'll blow up in the soldier's face. Well, this, my friends, was the beginning of the warmest friendship you could ever imagine. You got to understand the Filipino people. They are absolutely some of the most wonderful people you ever want to meet or see, and so brave. They were so good to us. They helped us so often, just as my dad was a big help to them, but they were always there for us when we needed them. So this is what happened. And we started, my father started a factory. These Filipinos were working with him and doing the equipment. So we tried to make a life there. All the schools were closed. The Japanese took over the synagogue, the one that I showed you the picture of earlier, and they used the building because there were such thick walls to keep all their ammunition in. One day, I was walking with my two brothers and my dad, and we went on what's called Dewey Boulevard. That's right on the ocean. And as we were walking, my father said, you know, it's a bit too quiet here. Something doesn't seem right. He said, I think we better go home. As we started to go home, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of trucks came by full of Japanese soldiers. They surrounded everybody that was on the boulevard, including us. And my father was saying, oh my gosh, this is it. The Japanese are going to kill us now. They were just rounding us up. Across the road from where my father was, there was a big garbage truck and some Filipinos there. And they were waving to my father, come quickly, bring the children. But it was too late. We were surrounded. One of the Filipinos snuck in between everybody, took us, my two brothers and I by the hand, said to my father, I can't save you, I can't help you because they're going to see it, but I can hide the children. With that, he ran out and he threw us into the garbage truck, which smelled like the dickens, of course, but Japanese soldiers were all over. But they figured, you know what, no one wants to go near a garbage truck that stinks. They took my father away with some other people. We went home. The guerrillas drove the garbage truck near our apartment house. We went upstairs. My mother took one look at us, and she said, oh, my goodness, what happened? What's going on? Where's your father? We told her what happened. Of course, we all started crying there. My mother cleaned us up, but we figured the Japanese took him away. That's the end of that. What occurred next was just unbelievable. They took my father to a special prison where very few people come out of. My father at that time was a smoker, and he had his last package of Camel cigarettes in his pocket. It became nighttime, and they put him in a separate cell because they figured that he was involved in something, but they didn't know what. Going to question him first way, and my father knew that the end could be coming very, very soon, very quickly. There was a guard outside his cell, and he was quite a big smoker. So my father said to him, you know, broken English or whatever, I don't know, showed him his package of cigarettes, and he said, do you want them? And the Japanese guard said, yes, you know, wanted them the worst way. So he said, wait till it gets a little bit darker. All I want you to do is open the cell door and let me out. So the Japanese guard thought he was going to be smart. He said to my father, okay, I'll let you out, but you have to run when you leave the cell. My father knew what he was talking about. He wanted my father to run so he could yell out, prisoner escape, and everybody would shoot my father. nighttime came, the cell door opened. My father gave him the cigarettes. He didn't run out. He walked right by all the Japanese guards, of course, scared stiff again, till he got through the jungle area. And then he ran like hell to get back to our apartment. There was such a mess in the prisons and everything. Nobody knew what was going on. I don't think they even realized that he was missing. But that took, again, a lot of courage. With that, the war started getting a little bit worse. The Battle of Midway came. Some of you may have seen the movie where we broke the Japanese code, and we did sabotage. We attacked the Japanese fleet. When their planes were in the air, we attacked the aircraft carriers, and the airplanes had no place to land. And that was the beginning of the turn of the war. But at this time, because things were getting worse, things got to the Japanese, the worse they acted towards us. But we had, my brother and I had a Japanese friend. He was, I believe, an officer in the army there. And we used to see him practically all the time sitting outside. And he would wave to us, and we would wave to him. It got to a point after 6 months, a year or so, we used to come over, and he showed us pictures of his family in Japan, and we sat on his lap, and he used to tell us little stories in Japanese, which of course we didn't understand. And whenever we went out to play, there was nothing to do. We had no childhood. We just went outside and walked around. But my father felt so bad for us. He took a piece of wood, found a pair of roller skates somewhere, and attached it, and we made like a scooter for us. So we're going up and down the street, but next to the one house there was a big Nazi flag, swastika. We didn't know what it was. We just kept playing, and it was around noon, and my brother and I going up and down the street. All of a sudden, this man comes out, and he says, "Stop, stop!" And with that, he hits me, and I fall down off the scooter, and I pushes my brother down also. He said, "You filthy little Jews, how dare you come and bother me on siesta time?" He said, "I know who you are. I know who your family is. We're going to get all of you, and your time is almost finished." He says, "Get out of here." And with that, and we were just scraped up a bit. We were crying. He took the scooter and went back into his house. He said, "Don't ever let me see you here again." So we started walking back home, and who's standing on the corner next to a Japanese barracks? Our Japanese officer friend, Muna. And he sees two little boys crying and bleeding a little bit, and he ran over to us, and we managed to tell him what happened. With that, he blows a whistle, and about half a dozen Japanese soldiers come running out of the barracks with their rifles, fixed bayonets, because they thought there was an attack or something. Muna basically told them what happened, and with that, they surrounded us. My mother can see us from the balcony from where we were, and she thinks that the Japanese are taking us out for target practice, that they're going to kill us. And I knew what she was thinking, something bad. But no, I waved to her. I said, "Everything is okay." Now you got a picture. There's some people on the street staring at us, and here are two little boys, 5 and 6 years old, surrounded by Japanese soldiers. We weren't even as tall as their rifles, marching down the street with Muna, an officer in the lead, right up to this German's house, and Muna telling them something in Japanese. They banged down the door. They opened it up, and the officer, the German, sees the Japanese. Now you got to understand, there was no love between the Nazis and the Japanese. The Nazis looked down on the Japanese. They used to call them little yellow monkeys, and the Japanese didn't like the Nazis for all their uppity stuff. But he looked at us, and one of the Japanese soldiers pointed to the scooter, and he said, "Oh, yes, 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 good boys, good boys." And with that, he took the scooter and gave it to my brother. So my brother turns around, and boom, he slaps him right in the face, right smack in the face. His glasses come falling off. I said, if ever a time was that this guy would want to kill us, it was right there and then. The Japanese soldiers thought it was the funniest thing in the world. They were laughing and laughing, but what could he do? Picks up his glasses, he puts them on, his wife comes out also, and he said, "You're a good boy," pointing to me. And with that, he taps me on the head and said, "You take this school. You good boys, good boys." He was so scared of these Japanese soldiers. And my brother said to me, "Did he hit you?" I said, No. I just want to get the heck out of there. I just want to go to my mama." So he said, my brother said, "Yes, he did. He hit you." And with that, my brother turns around and again he smacks the guy that Nazi right in the face. With that, the Japanese soldiers couldn't stop laughing. They were literally underground laughing their heads off. We didn't know what to do. Muna was cracking up also. This Nazi could do nothing. So we took the scooter and we started heading home. And Muna said, "Where you go? Where you go?" I said, "I'm going home to my mama." He said, No. He posted a guard right in front of the Nazis' house. And he said, "I want you every day. You go back and forth here on your scooter." And which we did for a long, long time. Time went on. The war got worse. We still had our scooter. And then I want to tell you that there's good people and bad people everywhere. Again, my father took my two brothers and I out, and we're going back up the stairs to our apartment, and the door opens, and there's a man standing there, very distinguished looking Caucasian man, but behind him was the biggest swastika you ever saw. And my father was thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is it. This is the Nazis." And he says, "I want to speak to you." He says, "Come inside." So my father quickly pushed us into our apartment. He went in. My dad said he was never so scared. And the man said, "Look," he said, "I was sent here by the German government." He said, "I will be in the German embassy here when we open it up." And he said, "I want you to know something. I may be a German, but I am not a Nazi. I have nothing against the Jews or any other people. I hate Hitler. I hate what's going on." And he said, "Believe me, there's a lot of other Germans just like me." He said, "But I have to tell you something. You better leave here as quickly as you can, because the Japanese are going to take over this apartment building. And then when the Nazis come in," he said, "they're going to try to round up the Jews that are here, and they're going to either kill you all here or send you back to Europe to be killed. Can you hold on for just 1 second, please? Margaret? Juliet? Never mind. Sorry, guys, if this throat gets dry. Anyhow, he said, you better leave as soon as you can." My father spoke to some of the guerrillas around, and they arranged for us to move. They took us on a big cart, and they had these like water buffaloes there. Took a few things that we had, and we moved to a place I believe was called Pasai. It was a big old Spanish house, and very, very thick walls. And the guerrillas said, "Here you'll be pretty safe." I said, "The walls are very thick," because American planes started flying over already. They started doing a bit of bombing. He said, "The walls are very thick, and you'll be pretty safe over here." So this is where we moved into, and my father, we had very little food at that time, but my father disappeared quite a few times, and he always seemed to come back with rice, and a couple of times he came back with a chicken. Thing is, the one chicken that he did get, it laid after, I don't know how long, it laid one egg and then dropped dead. So we didn't know what was wrong with it. We couldn't even eat the chicken, but we ate the egg. We had one egg between five of us in this whole war, 4.5 years. My mother boiled it, hard boiled, cut it up in 5 slices, and we shared it. The war was getting worse and worse and worse, but we did see American planes all over, and boy, what a wonderful sight. One plane I'll never forget came flying in very low, fighter plane, and waved its wings at us, saying that we know you're here, we know you're here. And as the war got worse, the Japanese got worse. And there was a time when I was with my mother. We had like an open kitchen, and I was sitting there with her. This was a bit hard to take, guys, so give me time, okay? I was sitting with her, and the gate of our place opened and closed, and I said, Mama, Papa, you see, Papa, you see. And she said, no. My father's here, my father. She said, no, it's not your father's walk, and he doesn't open the gate that way. We're sitting there, and who walks in? A dead, drunk Japanese soldier with his rifle and his bayonet. And I knew something terrible was going to happen. My mother said to me in French, no matter what happens, don't move, don't cry, just stare at him. Just stare at him. He walks up to me, he stinks of sake, which is Japanese liquor, and he pushes me a little bit without touching. My mother says, just stare at him, don't go away. He kept trying to push me off, first with the side of the rifle, then pointing his bayonet, and I just stared at him. Anytime I felt that I could kill somebody, it was right there if I only could. Comes up to my mother. She had a hot iron in her hand, and I could see that he was going to hurt my mother. I didn't know what rape meant. I didn't know anything about that. I was just a little boy, but I know this man was about to hurt my mother. And she just kept saying, don't worry. Just keep staring at him. 1 second. Margaret, come here. Cup of tea. Cup of tea, please.
Oh, another cup of
Please.
tea. How long gonna be to you?
So we were, he tried to push me away again. Nothing. He comes up to my mother, and my mother takes the hot iron and puts it right by his face, and he jumps back. Didn't know what to do, and he's kind of groggy a little bit from the sake. He comes up to me again. He tries to push, and I just stared at him. Went to my mother again, and I think he was about to grab her, and my mother put the iron out again. And with that, he turns around, he grunted, and he walked out. Of course, we were both hugging each other and crying. My father came in about half an hour later. I don't know where he was or what was going on, and we told him what happened. It was a good thing my father wasn't there, because my father would have killed him, and then we would have all been killed. But this is the life we had. It wasn't easy. There was another time in we saw what was called a dogfight. I don't know if you know what it is, when one plane is fighting against another plane. A bunch of American planes came in, they were bombing and strafing, and the Japanese planes came up, and one of the American planes was shot down. And we saw the pilot bail out. And my oldest brother and I said, look, let's see if we can save him. Let's see if we can get to him. And we started following where the parachute was, and it was not too far from where we lived. So we went over there just as he landed, and we thought he was okay at first, but he was dead, guys. But I said to my brother, let's take him home. We can fix him up. And my brother said, no, I think he's dead. The Filipinos that were there turned him over. But there was nothing left. It was full of bullet holes. So they just took his revolver, and they said, the Japanese are coming. Japanese are coming. And they ran off. Guys, I was crying. I said to my brother, we can still help him. We can still help him. We can take him back. We can take him home. And my brother said, well, we have to leave. The Japanese come, they'll kill all of us. You know, to this day, I can still see his young face. He's just a few years older than you, if that much. Maybe 19, 20, if that much. I see his face so clearly. If only I knew his name. If only I could have gotten his dog tags. If only I could tell his parents what a hero he was, how wonderful he was, how he saved us. Wasn't meant to be. To this day, I can still see his face so many times. Not easy, guys. And another time, two brothers and I, after a bombing, there was a church near us, and we went up the steeple to see maybe we could see something. Maybe American forces were somewhere around. We didn't know. And guys, we went up the steeple, which was pretty much bent over from all the bombing and everything. And we looked across the river. You know what we saw? Angels from America. The first cavalry was across the river. The army was here. The army was here. We saw the tanks. We saw the flag. We saw the pontoon boats. The Americans were just across the river from us. We wouldn't have to hide anymore. And we ran downstairs. We ran to my parents and we told them. Prior to this, by the way, when all the bombings, not many people survived the bombings. And my parents decided that either we're all going to live or all going to die. A lot of families made separate shelters for their children, etc. And figuring somebody will have to tell the story. My parents thought differently. They thought, and either we all make it or we all don't make it. My father built a shelter in the house and told us, whenever there's bombings or whatever's going on, artillery, just jump under there. And we did make it. There were holes all over the house. There's shelling and everything, but we managed to make it. A lot of people, they lost a child or they lost somebody in the family. And also, by the way, prior to that, my father once took my oldest brother out. We're running short on time. I'm going to talk a bit faster. And our luck, maybe dog came out of nowhere and bit my brother. My father immediately took him home, got hold of the girls, and they said, there's a doctor, but you're going to have to get him and bring him back and forth all the time. Luckily, my father knew every alleyway around. He managed to get to this doctor through the Filipinos, and he was able to, for 20 days, my brother had to have an injection against the rabies to save his life, otherwise he wouldn't have made it. But now let me step forward again now. We told my parents, the Americans are here. And they didn't believe it. And then all of a sudden we hear rumbling in the streets. And my parents at first thought it was a Japanese retreating, but it wasn't. It was the American army coming in, the first cavalry. And they came through and they looked at us and they stopped their trucks and tanks and everything. My parents told them the story of what's happened to us the last 4.5 years. And they unloaded the Colonel Hall, who was there. He unloaded a truck full of food and put it by our house, and they bivouacked right near where we were. So my brother and I used to go there all the time to eat, and we were eating spam. We thought it was the best thing around. They hated it. It was a time of reflection. So many American soldiers were killed. So many. But we made it. And at one point we were sitting there eating, and all of a sudden machine guns were going on. Bullets were flying all over. The soldier put his arm around me, another soldier around my brother. We're rolling down the hill. Luckily, there were some Filipino guerrillas there also. And they said, don't do anything because you're pinned down. Leave it to us. They snuck out. They had their machetes. They went all the way around into the jungle. About 15, 20 minutes later, we heard funny noises coming, screaming. And then the guerrillas were yelling out, don't shoot, it's us. And they came back holding the head of the Japanese soldiers. That was war. That was war. And one of the soldiers came when they were first free. He came to me and he put his arm around me and he said, I didn't know what chocolate was, what candy was. It was all new, and I barely spoke English. And he said, how would you like a baby Ruth? And I looked at him and I looked at my mother and I said, this soldier is crazy. He wants to give me his baby Ruth. And they started laughing. I didn't know what it was, a chocolate. And to tell you the truth, guys, every time now when I see the chocolates, the baby Ruth, I think of them and these wonderful soldiers. P.S. We're running out of time, guys, and I know there must be some questions, and I want to say a few personal things to you also. But we made it to America. We all made it in, and we were safe. A lot happened when we came to the States. It was a very, very difficult adjustment from being shot at all the time and seeing guns everywhere to a place where you don't have to worry. Believe it or not, it was a big adjustment. I hope I'll be able to come back and tell you more about that. But let me speak to you about some other things. You've got to understand, and you've got to know, you are going to be the generation that's going to take over this country. A lot has happened. I want to tell you, when you see that American flag, when you pledge allegiance, just remember how many soldiers died to make sure that you can be, thank you, free, and that you can go to the school, that I can talk to you and let you know what happened. That flag is worth everything. It's worth all the gold in the world, all the diamonds in the world. It stands for freedom. You can't buy it. We nearly lost our freedom on January 6th, and look what's happened. And it could happen again. Just know when you see that flag, and when you see a soldier, just say thank you. When you see a policeman, say, hey, officer, thank you. Thank you for being here for us. And guys, be kind. Be kind to each other. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. A mistake is a learning opportunity. You learn from it. If you see a fellow student who's having a difficult time, approach him. Say, hey, you know what? Why don't you come sit at our table? If you're having trouble with your homework or something, let me help you. Do what's called a mitzvah. Do the right thing. When you go home today, give your mother a hug. Give your grandparents a big hug. Ask them where they were during the war. And tell your dad, boy, it must be tough going for you to be able to send us to school and to live in such a wonderful place. Don't be afraid to be nice. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. And thank your teachers, because you know, they don't teach for income. They teach for outcome, and you are the outcome. And I see what's going on. And I got to tell you, there was a book written called The Greatest Generation by Tom Cracow. And I think you are good. It was about the war. I think you are going to be known as the greatest second generation of this COVID virus. One of you guys are going to write a book also about that. You have been wonderful. And it's been such a pleasure talking with you. And I hope I can come back and tell you more of what happened and what happened to us after the war. Kim, hi. Are we okay? I don't hear you. Kim?
Sorry, I was muted. I wanted to just mention that I do have lots of questions and comments from students, many who are sharing what an inspiration you are and how grateful that they, even with the garbled sound and the technological difficulties, they're still grateful to hear your story. A teacher wrote, keep sharing your stories, and may those who hear your stories learn so many valuable lessons. Before we start with questions, though, do you want to talk about the video?
Yes, I do want to talk about. I knew there was something that I forgot. I kept looking at the clock. Listen, guys, there's a song called Over the Rainbow. I think most of you are familiar with it. It was written after the war. But I want you to think of yourself in a concentration camp where there's no hope for you. You smell the ashes of your fellow people being burned, being gassed, being killed, dogs chasing you and killing you. Touch a wire and you're dead, and there's no hope. And yet there is hope. And the song Over the Rainbow, which was written by Allan Hall and Ian Happer, whose parents were survivors, and just think of it in the context of Jewish survival, of survival by anybody in the concentration camps. I just want to read you the words and then play the music for you. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there is a land I heard of once in a lullaby, meaning Palestine, Israel. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue. It's not full of ashes and clouds like it was in Auschwitz. And the dreams that you dare to dream really, really do come true. No killing, no ovens. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where you are. The clouds will be far behind us. But when trouble melts like lemon drops, away above the chimney drops, that's where you'll find me. Not in ashes. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then? Oh, why can't I? 10 years later, the state of Israel was declared. Thank you. guys. Thank you for listening. I hope next time I'll be able to come to the school and talk to you in person. I love you guys. And remember, don't forget to hug your parents.
Can you play the video, John?
Do you want to play this video, please?
Somewhere over the rainbow.
If you saw the film The Wizard of Oz, which Judy Garland was in, there's a song there called Over the Rainbow. This is a song written by Harold Arlen and Yip Hofsberg.
Now, just picture yourself in a German concentration camp. People are dying all over. They're being gassed. You don't know when it's your turn. People are being killed. 1.5 million children have already been killed. And you're wondering, what am I doing here? Why me? What's going on? What's going on?
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there is a land I heard of, Israel. Once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbows, skies are blue. And the dreams that you dare not dream really, really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind us, where troubles melt like lemon drops, away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then can't I? 10 years later was the state of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful video. And I want to just shout out to one of our own students from Bach Middle School who learned the song just for Mr. Lippitz so he could be part of that video.
Love that.
Yeah. Do you have time for a few questions?
Absolutely. All the time you want.
Okay. Teachers and students, I want to thank you for the amount of comments that you've made regarding Mr. Lippitz and his bravery and his passion. I will make sure that he sees those, just so you know. But let's just take a few of the questions. We have like close to 100, but I'm just going to pick some. Yes. I think students worked really hard to make sure that they could hear you and understand you today. Okay, so our first question is,
Sorry.
oh, it's not your fault, Mr. Lippitz. You were wonderful. The first question is, what helped push you to keep going when the future was uncertain? And they also want you to know that you are so inspiring and strong, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. When you grow up in this, you don't know that there's another life. You think that the whole world is like this, that life is going to be like this, that people are going to be killed all over the place, and you're going to see dead people everywhere. I didn't know what toys were. I didn't know what it would be like to sit on my grandparents' laps or to have hugs from my mother, though I had plenty of them, or my father. They were always so good and so kind. That's what kept us going. But I figured, your time's up, your time's up. Sooner or later, we're all going to be dead. If not by the Germans, by the Japanese, certainly by the Japanese.
A lot of the students want to know if you've ever been back either to Belgium or to the Philippines.
Well, I would love to go back to the Philippines. And the one thing I want to do more than anything is go to the American cemetery. I got a lot of thank yous to say. I got a lot of prayers to say to those young boys, for those young boys who are so brave, who gave their lives to save this little 10-year-old boy who now is talking to you. and all the others. They gave them 4 years in the jungle. Can you imagine that? 4 years longer in the jungle, and not knowing day by day if you're going to be shot at, if you're going to be bitten by a poisonous snake or whatever. They never complained. They were the greatest generation, just like you are now the greatest generation after getting through this past year. And you guys are going to be great. I know it. You're going to do well in government. You're going to do well in whatever you do. You're just wonderful. And I can't wait to be able to meet you personally.
Next year.
Next year.
Another student asked, and you answered part of this, when you didn't know really what a normal childhood was. But what do you think is a valuable lesson that people now could learn, that you learned, and would benefit most people in society in general today?
Well, the first thing to learn is there's nothing better than peace. There's nothing better than being kind. It's better to give than to receive. And to be a good person is everything in life. You'll know right from wrong. And if you made a mistake, again, like I said before, making a mistake is others' learning experience. Correct them. Do the right thing. Don't be afraid to say you did something wrong. But work at doing the right thing. You'll know when you're doing the right thing. And be kind and get your education as much as you want, as much as you like. But remember, this country was built by people like you guys. And I have great faith in you.
Our mistakes don't define us. This is a question from a student. They want to know your opinion. Do you think that Nazis seemed like they were simply afraid that they were drafted as young men, or that they were people who knew what they were fighting for and they were passionate about it?
Interesting question. It depends. Don't forget Hitler was voted in. So that says a lot. And Germany was coming out of a big depression, and they were looking for a scapegoat. The scapegoat was the Jews. But a lot of the German soldiers, they just wanted to be home with their sweethearts, with their girlfriends, and lead a normal life also. I'm sure they were not happy with what was going on. We had a neighbor right here in Coral Springs, a lovely, lovely lady whose father was in the Wehrmacht, and she was telling me the story. He was captured by the Russians, and they had no idea what happened to him. They thought he was dead. Years went by, and all of a sudden they were out in the garden, and they see coming up the road an old, decrepit-looking man. It was her father. It was her father after all the years being in a Russian camp. So there were no great bargains being captured by the Russians either. And a lot of Germans suffered terribly because of this.
Yeah.
And just know, don't say just because somebody does something that everybody like him is a criminal. A lot of good Germans, a lot of good Japanese. Muna probably saved our lives.
Yeah. Another student wants to know, what's it like always having that feeling of the need for an escape plan?
It's just a part of me. I always know wherever I go, whether I'm going to a movie theater, whether I'm just filling my car up with gas, I never let it go below 3/4 of a tank because I don't know what's going to happen. And these days, more than ever, I worry about what could happen. I want to know that if I got to move quickly with my family, I got a full tank of gas. I know that if I'm in a place where I'm not sure about whether it's a department store, a movie theater, wherever, I got to know where the exits are. And I never would go to an exit where everybody's rushing because that's when you get killed. Go somewhere else. Find more than one.
This isn't a question, but somebody just wanted to say that you're one of the best people they've ever seen, and you really made them think.
I love you guys.
About how unfair it is that this can happen, and they have a lot of respect for you, and they thank you. I do have other questions. I just wanted to, there's a lot of those comments, so I wanted to just
That's very nice. I appreciate that very much.
A lot of thank yous for your courage. A common question I'm seeing is, why do you do this? Why do you speak to students?
Why? Because I don't want this to ever happen again. I want you to be my witness. Too many people are saying the Holocaust never happened. This outgrowth of a Nazi party starting all over again. And even here, if you saw the riots on January 6th, a lot of them were neo-Nazis. You saw some of the shirts that they were wearing saying Camp Auschwitz or 6 million was only a good start. There's too much hatred around against Jews, against blacks, against gays. It's ridiculous. Let everybody live. Let everybody learn how to share. Rejoice in each other's different cultures. Don't be against it. Everybody's got good in them, and get the best out of everybody, not the worst. And if I keep talking, as long as I have strength, I'm going to be 85 years old, but hopefully another 10 years, I can talk maybe even to some of your kids.
Yeah. Another student wrote, I really wish I could just sit down and speak to you in person.
Anytime. Anytime.
And I know students have to get going back to class. So I'm going to end now by just saying thank you. And thank you to all the students, teachers. Thank you to Mr. Wasserman and Dr. King. I am going to share all of these questions and comments with Mr. Lippitz. And he's also fond of responding to emails from students. If you have anything you really want to, share with him, or you have any more questions or concerns, he's wonderful as someone to give advice and wisdom and share more of his experience. And so I can share his email with you if you would like. But I just want to say thank you. And students, you're going to go back to your regular Google Classroom or stay in your classroom with your teacher. And again, I apologize wholeheartedly for the difficulty with the sound, but we made it through, and I think it was worthwhile. So thank you, everybody.
It was worthwhile for me.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lippitz.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.